Good morning, everyone. I wanted to give some information that I was just learning a few days ago about a drug called duvelisib, aka copiktra, and how this could be used as a potential treatment for COVID-19. So let's start off here. We have the therapy known as copiktra or duvelisib. I'm going to use those words interchangeably. So, if you feel some kind of way, just bear with me, okay? So, this is the clinical trials website. I'm not going to go through the whole site that they have for this drug because the link is in the description box. You can check that out. The collaborator with Washington University School of Medicine is Veristem, and I'll go into this company a little bit later. But they have the drug duvelisib. It's a phase 2 trial. And what I want people to recognize is the start date here is June 30th, 2020. Just a few days ago, they started. It says it's a pilot study, but duvelisib has been used for many other cancers and leukemia, as well as lymphoma, many other diseases that people are suffering from. Their primary completion date or the end of the time they will collect samples is July 31st, 2021. And when they wrap up everything and analyze all the data, they're projecting that for December 31st, 2021. So for people thinking that you can get a treatment developed within 3 to 4 months or 3 to 6 months or even preposterous, because this is one treatment that is not really talked about as much on the mainstream media, as much as I've seen, as much as I would like to see. Remdesivir has been talked about quite a lot, but this one hasn't really gotten that much attention. And this one deals more, duvelisib or copiktra, deals more with cells that are highly proliferative, such as cancer cells, right? So it is potentially beneficial to these patients with advanced COVID-19 infection. So duvelisib will be given orally by a duvelisib suspension. So this is a pill that they will put into suspension form, and it will be administered through a nasogastric, orogastric tube. Then they will study the patient samples by peripheral blood draws, and they have each day they will screen those patients during this study. The time frame for the study is going to be 28 days, and they also have criteria down here listed, which is usually the longest part of a trial when they have it on the website. This whole section here is what they use to include you in the study, all this blue that you see. So you need to have a positive test of COVID-2, which is confirmed by reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction, and they collect that in the upper or lower respiratory tract. And then it's verified by a qualified laboratory such as the CDC or the FDA. And they have many other reasons that they give for including you in the study. If you have disease manifestations such as the chest imaging with more than 50% lung involvement, respiratory failure, shock, cardiac dysfunction, and so forth, all of these things are reasons for being included. The exclusion criteria, which is very common, that is very short. This is the exclusion criteria they have in blue. If you have known allergies or intolerance to duvelisib or other PI3K inhibitors. So PI3K is a very large phosphatidylinositol-3 kinase signaling pathway that affects many other proteins and enzymes within the cell proliferation, cell differentiation, cell migration, cell invasion, those types of functions of a cell. We study PI3 kinase in cancer, but PI3 kinase also has been found to have regulatory mechanisms for immunity. There's a connection between immunity. So that's why they want you to know for certain. So if you go to the doctor and you don't know if you have intolerance or allergy to some of these things, you need to ask them by these words, because every doctor knows what PI3 kinase is, what AKT is, what MAP kinase is, RAF, MEK, ERK, all these types of these acronyms for signaling pathways. They know what they are. And I'll go into a few in a minute. So they also say if you have a known or suspected active viral infection, virologic testing is not required unless infection is suspected, okay? If you're pregnant and are breastfeeding, you are excluded. Any uncontrolled incurrent illness that would put the patient at greater risk or to limit compliance with study requirements, in the opinion of the investigator, you are excluded. So there aren't, like I said, there aren't many things to exclude you, but there are many things that you can read here that I didn't go through. They also have the contact information of the principal investigator, Dr. John D. Percio from United States in Missouri. And we also have, if we go to Develosib here, this link is also in the description box. So this has come from the National Laboratory of Medicine, National Library. I am just messing up today. Bear with me, y'all. National Library of Medicine, the National Center for Biotechnology Information, NCBI. So when I want to know something about a chemical, I look it up on PubMed. And PubMed gives me information about the research that's been done on that chemical. And sometimes I want to know more information. So then I go to PubChem. And PubChem is just publications of chemicals. And this is also helpful when you want to know the safety and hazardous effects of a chemical or drug. So you go there and they'll tell you everything. They give you the health hazards and all that. The chemical safety summary data sheet is here, the structure, the PubChem. Oh, my bad. Let's go back up here. PubChem always has a chemical identification number, and this is Develosib's chemical identification number. And this is just universal. They give the molecular weights, they give different dates, they give you what it does. It's orally bioavailable, highly selective and potent small molecule inhibitor. They give you everything you really need to know. If you want to know more about liver toxicity, or you want to see this in a drug bank, then you can go look that up. And if we switch to a different path, which is finance, because in order to conduct a clinical trial, in order to use these drugs and develop these drugs, money has to be involved somewhere. And it's always good to look outside of the standard wheelhouse and see what other people are talking about in regards to, this topic, which is Develosib. They say here, this article from MarketWatch was published May 7th this year from Veristem Incorporated. They talk about what their company does. They talk about this drug is, going to be going into clinical trials. They're talking about what it's doing with these different signaling pathways, as you see here. As I said, I'm not going to go into detail. This link is in the description box. You can check that out. But also they go into the phase 1 trial, phase 1 investigator sponsored study, which is a trial. The frame is called FRAME. And this was done in patients with KRAS mutation, advanced solid tumors, including ovarian cancer and several others. They talk about how it was presented at AACR. They did a virtual meeting this year, and they presented defacitinib in patients with KRAS mutations. And defacitinib is very close to duvelisib as far as its apparently as far as its potency and the different signaling pathways that it affects. So usually the way these drugs work is they bind to a important molecule within that signaling pathway, and that molecule cannot bind to another molecule in the chain of activities that should occur. So if you think about like a domino effect, well, if you have dominoes set up and you tip one domino off, you assume that the whole domino display that you set up, everything's going to fall down in sequence. But if you put a piece of cardboard in the middle of this display and the last domino hits that cardboard, well, that stops the chain, that stops the sequence. So you don't have the end of that sequence occurring. What was going to happen, maybe the last domino that fell was going to fall into, I don't know, some water or something. So that doesn't happen. And that's one thing that these drugs do. They block that signaling pathway. Some drugs are very selective, like these drugs, where they block several signaling pathways, meaning there are several pieces of cardboard in between the domino setup, the domino display. And they are looking for a specific amino acid or a specific protein structure that they bind to. And so others are not as selective. They just, they bind everywhere. And that's where you could have, if the drug is bioavailable, you could potentially have higher risk for side effects that are adverse, right? So this is how these drugs work. And it's important for people who are in finance to clearly look at drugs that are going to be on the market potentially. And so I just wanted to bring this information to you all. I hope that it was helpful. I hope that we're able to look at other drugs besides just remdesivir. I know that everyone's talking about remdesivir. As you can see here, there are articles all the way across from a few days ago, a day ago, a few hours ago that are talking about remdesivir, and that's fine. If they feel that remdesivir is a molecule that is more broad spectrum as an antiviral medication that can be used, then that's okay. But we still have to remember that there are other drugs on the horizon that may be as beneficial or even more beneficial. So I hope this was helpful. I'll end it there. You let me know what you think in the comment section, and I'll talk to you in the next video. Peace.